Hello everyone, my name is Tay from Yu-Gi-Oh! Fantasy, and today we're making a slightly different style of video than you may be used to on this channel, but today we are ranking every single duel from Duelist Kingdom arc in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters. However, before we get started, I wanted to say firstly, thank you so much for 500 subscribers. It means more than you know, and I also wanted to mention that we officially have a community Discord for the Yu-Gi-Oh! Fantasy channel. I recently put the link on my community page, but it will also be in the description of this video and all future content on the channel. There's a few viewers in there already who have shared some awesome ideas for future content on the channel and just discussing Yu-Gi-Oh! In general, and they're getting to know me as a person more than just the guy who voices over the rewrites, and it's been so much fun to get to know you all, so I'd love to see some more of you in there as well. Also, I definitely owe you all an apology. I plan on taking a short break following finishing the Duelist Kingdom rewrite, but it wasn't supposed to be this long. I got very bogged down with work and I was just feeling knackered all the time, and I neglected the channel, so I can only apologise, but I am back now and plan to hopefully give you the content you've been craving. Anyway, with all that said, let's get on to what I think the worst duel in Duelist Kingdom is. Number 19, Yui Moto vs Ghost Kyber. I think I may have mentioned this in my rewrite series, but if I didn't, let me make it clear. I hate this duel. I hated it as a kid, and I hate it now. And as this list is based off my personal opinion and enjoyment, this easily takes a spot of worst duel in the series to this point. When I was younger, I pinned it down to really hating the eerie design of the Ghost, but as I watched it over and over again growing up, it just got worse. The idea of it being the dark side of Kyber, in theory, isn't awful, but in execution it was so poor, and not to mention the ending of the blue eyes literally melting and then Yugi making a play with Mystical Elf, which made no logical sense whatsoever, was just the icing on the cake for me. This duel sucks. Number 18, Yui Moto vs Panic. In our next spot we have Yugi vs Panic. Now whilst this duel I also really don't enjoy, it has a few key moments which I do like, which I'll go over in just a moment, but first I need to mention why this duel is awful as well. The idea of Yugi not being able to see the monsters because of the darkness sucks. There is light surrounding the arena, so just because it's dark doesn't nullify that fact, and if you want to blame it on Panic harnessing the darkness, well that's stupid, because if Panic of all people was able to do that, why wouldn't every single other villain with powers greater than his do the same thing? I will say, however, this isn't the worst for a couple of reasons. Partly because Yugi shows some real arrogance and just channels a really cool persona, and it truly shows why he is a competent and badass protagonist. Secondly, Catapult Turtle is very cool. I would also like to quickly mention that I did like the trope of Panic bullying his opponents into submission almost, by just making them so insecure they make mistakes. The duel could have easily been based around that instead of, ooh, spooky darkness, and it would have been so much better. Number 17, Yui Moto vs Maximilian Pegasus 1, Videotape Duel. This duel is definitely actually a step up from the last two, but it's obvious as to why it's kept down. I should mention that I think this was actually a really good way to introduce Pegasus' character. It gave him this sinister vibe, but he clearly wasn't your average villain with the way he wanted to play games and mess around with Yugi. However, there is no winner in the duel, and that alone is a trope I personally don't like in most situations, and not to mention the part that definitely didn't help was that Yugi was going to win. Pegasus should have come across as an undefeatable from minute 1 of his introduction. Number 16, Gardner vs My Valentine. Now, before you scream at me in the comments, I'm well aware that this duel is probably at the very bottom for a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans, and I wouldn't necessarily dispute it if I saw someone else make this list, but for me there are redeeming factors. I liked seeing Taya duel, and I liked how clear it was that she was not as talented as others, and if someone new was watching Yu-Gi-Oh! For the first time, given the stakes and why she's dueling, you'd be wondering how on earth could she win against Mai, and the fact she wins because Mai shows humanity does a lot for Mai's character as well. Number 15, Joey Wheeler vs Seto Kaiba. I actually surprised myself putting this duel this high, but for me it's purely because of who's involved. Joey and Kaiba are polar opposite characters, and this is a highly anticipated duel. Not to mention, this really kicks off a rivalry which lasts the entire series. Also, seeing Red Eyes and Blue Eyes in the same duel is really cool. However, I briefly touched on this in the rewrite, I have always despised these stupid Beyblade duels. They suck. I hate the concept and it's completely stupid, and they made me watch it twice. Number 14, Yui Moto vs Seto Kaiba 2, Life or Death. Speaking of watching it twice, this duel is only minorly better, and that's because I actually like the ending. Very rarely do we get some mature drama in Yu-Gi-Oh! That also translates to the dub, but as a child this was it, and it was great. Also, how amazing is Blue Eye's Ultimate Dragon, the GOAT of original Yu-Gi-Oh monsters? However, Beyblade Duel Disk, enough said. Number 13, Yui Moto vs Yamy Bakura. This duel marks a spot where I'd say we're getting into the duels which are mainly very enjoyable. When I was younger, I actually didn't enjoy the group being transported into the bodies of their monsters as much, because I think that's because I loved seeing the monsters themselves. But with that said, as I've rewatched it now I'm older and appreciate it for what it is, I think it's a really neat twist and really made Bakura seem intimidating. Also, the duel itself is fun. We get to see proper use of Morphing Jar, which is an iconic monster to this day. Change of Heart is a cool card, and we got to see another Spirit of a Millennium item, and it really helps build your excitement for more. Number 12, Yui Moto vs Weevil Underwood. This duel is really underrated in my opinion. From the minute Weevil destroys Exodia, everyone wants to see him get his ass beat by Yugi, but a duel was good enough too. Weevil was an annoying and creepy villain, and his deck was intimidating at this early stage of the show. Yugi looked great when defeating Weevil, Mirror Force is the best trap of all time, and it's great to see Yugi get some minor revenge and display his skills. Number 11, Yui Moto vs Mako Tsunami. Giant Soldier of Stone, attack the moon. Yeah, it's stupid, but honestly, it's great. I will not listen to people's arguments of logic when it comes to this duel. Mako is so good, he literally threw a harpoon at Yugi before the duel, which is ironic because it's one of the first times, if not the first time, we get to see Yugi duel someone that, as an audience, we can also like and respect. Mako's monsters are cool, and so is his backstory. Every time I was playing at the beach as a kid, I was that weird kid, like talking to myself and pretending to duel like Yugi against Mako in the ocean. This one's iconic for me. Number 10, Joey Wheeler vs My Valentine. Just about breaking into the top 10 is a personal favourite of mine because it's everyone's favourite New Yorker, Joey Wheeler versus My Valentine. This duel is this high because I think it was a genuinely really fun duel. My cheats throughout, but we get to see Joey not being such a helpless idiot for once and figure it out. Not to mention the first time we see the Harpies who are really cool, and Time Wizard. This duel wasn't only a good one for Joey either. I always remember the moment Joey asked Mai exactly why she duels, and you can pinpoint the exact moment as the beginning of Mai's character arc of becoming friends with the group. Also, Thousand Dragon, 10 out of 10 monster. Number 9, Joey Wheeler versus Bones. I love Joey versus Bones. Obviously my bias towards Joey duels is quickly becoming apparent, but I love an underdog story and I also love his monsters. Also, Bones is a great character and zombie monsters are awesome. We also meet Bandit Keef for the first time through this duel, and it really easily makes you hate him with the way he treats Bones and Joey during this whole thing. Also, it's a genuinely unique and smart finish from Joey using Sword and Shield to play on the zombies monster's one weakness in terms of their defense. It shows how much Joey's grown as a duelist and excellently sets up Joey versus Keef down the line. Number 8, Joey Wheeler versus Rex Raptor. Shock horror, number 8 is another Joey duel. Now whilst I will actually admit as a duel I could be swayed to swap this with the Bones duel, there is one key factor that makes it higher for me. Red Eyes Black Dragon. Without a doubt my favourite monster in the whole show, getting to see exactly how Joey obtained his most iconic and best card, not to mention getting to see Rex getting beat much like Weevil is a great watch, and that's why it's in my 8th spot. Number 7, Yui Moto vs Seto Kyber 1, Exodia Obliterate. If I was to be completely honest with you, if you're looking for good plays and a high dueling IQ, this obviously isn't the duel for you, but if you expect me to ignore the first ever duel in Yu-Gi-Oh! Series history and the most iconic moment in the anime's history, then you're sorely mistaken. I have so many friends who have no interest in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or anime in general, but if I simply shout Exodia, then I know at least half of them will scream Obliterate, and have no idea of the context. This duel is a reason most of us are obsessed way into our late teens or even adult life. Number 6, Joey Wheeler versus Bandit Keef. I think you can tell by now that I haven't said any of the Duelist Kingdom finals/semi-finals at this point, and the main reason they're all so high up is because I love duels with high stakes, and all of the duels had been built up too throughout the season, especially this one. We all knew this duel was coming from the moment Joey defeated Bones. This was Joey's chance to prove himself to the world and meet his best friend in the finals, not to mention the fact that Bandit Keef had been built so well as this extremely strong and well-known duelist to this point, with his own motivations to defeat Pegasus. During this duel we also got to see some really cool cards: Red Eyes Metal Dragon, Zoa, Pendulum Machine, Slot Machine, Launcher Spider, Time Machine, and the list really does go on, but sadly for this duel it just misses out on my top 5. Number 5, Seto Kaiba versus Maximilian Pegasus. Just breaking into the top 5 is a duel that served its purpose and more. Now, the only reason this duel isn't higher is because I preferred other duels more, but that doesn't mean it's not excellent. We got to see Kyber, who has previously wiped the floor with Joey, who at this point is one of the 4 finalists. He beat Yugi to get this match, even though it was via nefarious means, and now he's facing Pegasus, who goes ahead and just makes a fool out of him. This was the duel that made Pegasus feel like an insurmountable task for Yugi, a truly terrifying and eerie final boss, and he did it all whilst using cartoon monsters and the most noteworthy monster of them all, Blue Eyes Toon Dragon. This duel is genuinely great and served every purpose it set out to serve and more, and that's why it's in my top 5. Number 4, Yui Moto vs My Valentine. Now, I know my number 4 pick may shock some people with being quite this high, but in my personal opinion, it truly deserves it. This was honestly the first duel that felt like a real rule-abiding duel and did a lot for both characters. Mai showed she really was a great duelist, and that she's grown so much as a person, refusing to win unless Yugi was at his very best. It also helped to put to rest Yugi's inner dilemma of not trusting the Pharaoh, as he simply couldn't save his grandpa without working with him. Number 3, Yui Moto vs Maximilian Pegasus 2, Champion vs Creator. The first duel on the podium today is the final duel of the season, Yugi vs Pegasus. Again, as I've said for other duels on the list, based on personal preference this could easily be 5th or 1st, but this duel really is great. This duel was the one we were waiting for from the beginning of the show, the crazy yet terrifying, insurmountable villain versus our caring and pure protagonist. This duel had it all. Yugi was on the back foot almost the entire duel. Pegasus had the better cards, better game knowledge, and knew every card Yugi had, and in classic Yu-Gi-Oh fashion, Yugi still came out on top thanks to the power of friendship. And Kaiba. The only reason this duel isn't higher on my list is purely because for me, it was just 1 or 2 episodes too long. Number 2, Yui Moto and Joey Wheeler versus the Paradox Brothers. Now for the silver medal, and before you come for my head, I know there are some people who hate how high I have this duel, but I love tag duels. Every single one in every anime I always get hyped for. This duel is so much fun, and even better knowing it's the final hurdle before the tournament finals. The Paradox Brothers as villains are so much fun. The way they look and the way they speak is very unique to this point in the series, and Gate Guardian was such a great challenge to overcome, and even whilst I usually can't stand weird shticks in duels, the Labyrinth is one of the few I really enjoyed. And even with all of these points I make, that's not to mention getting to see Joey step up his game and come across as an equal to Yugi, which was needed before their eventual duel against each other. We also got to see Red Eye's Black Skull Dragon, and that is such an amazing monster. Number 1, Yui Moto vs Joey Wheeler. I'm sure it's obvious by now, but my favourite duel in Duelist Kingdom and one of my favourite duels to date in all of the animes is Yugi vs Joey. This duel had everything, and I really mean everything. It even had the coolest musical hype package before it even began, which I forgot existed until my most recent rewatch, and my god, it was amazing. The ending to the duel was awesome, completely subverting expectation with the Dark Sage, and the fact Joey got to show off how good he had become, to the point even Yugi was struggling, was just a masterful storytelling, and I love every single thing about this duel. It deserves my number 1 spot and gold medal for sure, and this is something I will not compromise on. And that's all. Thank you so much for watching this video all the way through, if you did, and I want to apologise again for how long it took me to come back. Truthfully, work has been kicking my ass, and although these videos are simple to edit, it's still very time consuming, but nevertheless I'm really excited to be back, and the rewrite will continue hopefully soon. Don't forget to subscribe if you enjoyed the video and leave a like, and tell me in the comments if there's anything you would change. Also, join my Discord. It's a great way to talk to me about videos, new or old, and to get to know me a bit better. With all that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.